Rananim, and welcome to Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs. I'm your host, Morgan Cobbs. Talk Time. Again, to my listeners here in Micronesia, good morning. To my listeners back in the States, good evening, good afternoon, evening, whatever time it is out there. And I'm currently in my office. Yeah, this is actually my office for teaching. So, and this will probably be where I record going forward because people have informed me. I used to record in the school library and like the conference room, but the Wi-Fi isn't as great there. So my office, like this is probably like where I get the best like connection. So hopefully for the remainder of this broadcast, there won't be any buffering. There won't be any like glitching because that is something that folks have kind of told me that they've seen from time to time. So fingers crossed, no buffering, no glitching for the remainder of this broadcast and all future broadcasts. So, um, so I am officially 2 weeks in. I'm officially 2 weeks into teaching here at Xavier. Um, I've loved every second. I've loved every second of it. I've learned a lot about myself as an individual, myself as an educator now. It's my very first time teaching, so my very first 2 weeks, and learned a lot about teaching students and teaching different subjects like math, computer skills, different types of students, and like depending on like how old they are and like their age and like their grade, and so these last 2 weeks have been a learning experience, not just for me, but also for the students, and learning how to teach and things of that nature. So I'm grateful for every last second of it. You know, it's been it's been fun. Usually we have a group of us. Usually, like there's a group of students. Like one of the priests here at the school, he will take his boat over to one of the other islands, Pfeffin. The island that we're on is called Weno. Like it's an island state of Chuk, Chuuk. Chuk, that's the island state, but that's made up of multiple islands. And Weno, this is like the main island in Chuk state. Pfeffin is one of the smaller islands that we have. One of the priests here will say will every other Sunday like take his boat and like a group of us, teachers, whoever wants to come, and we will go over to Pfeffin for the day. And there's a church over there with mass, and we'll do some snorkeling. I have not gone yet, and they don't go every Sunday. They go every other Sunday. So since this week is the off week, here I am now on the live stream. But going forward, Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs will be probably a bi-weekly. It'll probably be every other week. So I probably won't have a live stream next week. Yeah, next week there won't be a live stream because I'll be with them at Pfeffin, you know. But make sure that you guys are following me on Instagram. Check the show notes below. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, not just the podcast Instagram, but also my personal Instagram, so you can like kind of keep up to date with like all my adventures here in the FSM. Yeah, to keep up with that, definitely turn on those post notifications and follow me on Instagram and all the social medias. But going forward, it will be a bi-weekly show. So no episode next week. After today's episode, I will see you guys in 2 weeks. And I will also be recording in my office from now on. I do have a fan going, because it does get pretty hot pretty fast in here. I got the fan blowing directly on me, but it's at the lowest setting, so I hope there's not too much echo, too much background noise. The acoustics in here are actually pretty good. So yeah, expect at least 2 posts a month minimum from Cobbs Corner in general. That's talk time along with like my movie reviews. Expect at least 2 episodes a month because I am starting to get back into the swing of reviewing movies and um, so yeah, it's like I said in my special announcement. This podcast is not going anywhere, but expect at least 2 episodes a month. Whether that be the 2 episodes of Cobb's Corner, every other Sunday, or in addition to whatever movies I am able to review. I'm not gonna put like an official like schedule on that, just because I am teaching full time at this point. So yeah, again, shout out to the notification gang. All right, whether if you're listening to this on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, hit that notification bell. That's the main like takeaway from the first 6 minutes of this podcast. I just had to get that like housekeeping and like logistical stuff out of the way. All right, now on to the reason why all of you listen to this podcast is because we are the one-stop shop for all things TV, film, and pop culture. All right, so let's just get into it. Ahsoka Part 3. Ahsoka Episode 3. The episode was called Time to Fly. Yep. Time to Fly. I'm just gonna confirm that. Yep, Time to Fly. Yep, time to Fly. I enjoyed this episode. Now, again, like I said in my last episode, I have not watched all of Star Wars Rebels. I'm in the process of kind of watching Ahsoka and Rebels simultaneously. And, the first season, I was able to finish the first season before I left the States. But now that I'm in Micronesia, I'm trying to get in like at least an episode, like an episode a day, but again, now I know what it's like to have a full-time job and also be trying to watch a show at the same time. So Part 3, we start to see Ahsoka train Sabine in the way of the Jedi. The show has taken a lot of like technicalities because although I haven't watched all of Clone Wars, I've watched like enough like summary videos on YouTube to find out that, and I watched enough of like Rebels in real time way back when to know that Ahsoka never officially finished her Jedi training. That she technically never became a Jedi. That she left the Jedi Order as a Padawan, I think. She left the Jedi Order, and hence why she has like the white, and she adopted the white lightsabers as a way of showing like neutrality. She is neither Jedi nor Sith. And so, yeah, that explains like the white lightsabers. And there was the episode back in season 2 of The Mandalorian where Ahsoka showed up for like the one episode, and then she was looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I do hope that we see Thrawn in this season. I mean, it would suck if it was like another case of like The Force Awakens, which I'll get to later in the episode, where we just see like one shot of Thrawn on episode 8, and there's 8 episodes in this series, so we got 5 more. We got 3 down, 5 to go. It would suck if we didn't actually get to see Thrawn, but I'm really hoping that we do, because Thrawn, he's actually like one of my favorite characters from Rebels. Again, to Star Wars and to my Star Wars fans listening, I'm going to catch up. I'm going to watch all 4 seasons of Rebels and then maybe go back and rewatch all of Ahsoka. So either, I don't know if this is a multi-season show or if it's just going to be like a one-off, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi. But they've been kind of teasing this. They've been kind of teasing Ahsoka for a while with the one, she showed up for the one episode in season 2 of The Mandalorian. the one episode in Book of Boba Fett. Again, a show that I enjoyed. And yeah, I mean, we start to see her train Sabine in the art of the Jedi. Sabine, who's Mandalorian, and Hagar, the David Tennant's character. David Tennant, he plays like the robot who's pretty much existed since like who's been around since like the days of like the Galactic Republic or either the Old Republic or the Galactic Republic, and he says how like Sabine, you are like the worst of the Force sensitive creatures that I've encountered in my very, very long time in existence. So he didn't have to say that. We start to see Sabine and Ahsoka start to sort of trust each other more. This episode definitely had like a New Hope vibes, when they fly over to that planet at like the edge of like the Outer Rim, and just going through the cast here. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, match made. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who is married to Ewan McGregor. Okay, they are a power couple in a galaxy far, far away. I love what they're doing with the show, giving, seeing the Rebels in live action. We're seeing Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera Syndulla. We're seeing Natasha Liu Bordizzo as Sabine Wren. So these are all characters that we've all fallen in love with in animation, and finally seeing them in live action, which is great. I'm curious to see like when are we going to see Ezra, Eman Esfandi as Ezra Bridger. I'm really just on the edge of my seat with this show, just in general. But it was nice to see sort of like a New Hope style like dogfight with the ships, and we start to see Ahsoka become less of a like, my way or the highway, here's your task, do it, no questions asked, to then her finally asking, Sabine, tell me what you need. What do you need? Okay, let's work together to actually like take out these ships. And then they find it looks like a giant hyperspace ring, but really it's kind of like a Stargate that Morgan Elsbeth, again, lovely name. Morgan Elsbeth, played by Diana Lee Inosanto. We we see essentially this giant like Stargate. I'm interested to see, are we going to see another galaxy? Because they're talking about like a whole other galaxy outside of like the galaxy that we've known about in the Star Wars universe for like 46 years at this point. I mean, it's been almost 50 years. So say, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's like now you're opening the window to there's another galaxy. I think that there's going to be a ton of room for a lot more like storytelling and universe expansion going forward. So yeah, with the show, I'm excited, and we start to see there's sort of like the in-between period between I think it's setting up the in-between period between Return of the Jedi. Like at the end of Return of the Jedi, we see how there's statues are brought down, like the Empire is gone, hooray. The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett kind of existed on a bit on like the outskirts of the galaxy, because Mandalorian, it's kind of like a space western, and in a way Book of Boba Fett is kind of also gives you that lawless like bounty hunter, lone gunslinger vibes, and to be fair, George Lucas did draw inspiration from a lot of spaghetti westerns as well as like westerns in general. from like the 1950s and 60s when he was making Star Wars. So yeah, they get kind of gave us that lawless vibe, but also with this show we start to see what is that transition from the Empire to, or no, yeah, from the Empire to the New Republic, and we start to see how, like, really, the galaxy just got out of one giant civil war, and now that the Sith have been defeated, the Empire is no more. That transitional government, it's like, how do you move forward from there? How do you transition from like one government to the next? Which they kind of touched on a bit, I think, in Mandalorian season 3, a bit. But I mean, last week's episode, I think episode 2, we saw how, yeah, there's some parts of the New Republic that are still loyal to the Empire, and how some of the senators, they really just want to maintain the peace. We even see Mon Mothma, who's played by Genevieve O'Reilly, and yes, Genevieve O'Reilly, who had played Mon Mothma in. She shows up also in Andor and in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I am not sure if she played. Not sure if she played Mon Mothma in animation in Star Wars Rebels, but Mon Mothma, she showed up in Return of the Jedi, technically. Like, I was just rewatching. She showed up for that one scene in Return of the Jedi. She had a deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, she was on Andor, and now she's a senator in the New Republic. So Mon Mothma, Star Wars, veteran between eras. I think she's showed up in, like, I guess technically all 3 eras. The Clone Wars, the Galactic Civil War, and now setting up the sequel trilogy. So I'm interested to see like elements of like the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, and that in between period, because I think it's about a 30-year time jump from Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens, canonically. So again, Star Wars scholars, feel free to correct my math. But yeah, we start to see how Hera saying like, look, I grew up during an entire war, and let's remember, Hera is a Twi'lek, and there's the Twi'lek planet of Ryloth, and I think they dive deeper into her backstory on Rebels, which again I have to do the homework, of course. She grew up during the Galactic Civil War, during that time period, so she's essentially a veteran who's telling them, let me help you prevent another war. She doesn't get approval for the mission, but they go ahead anyway. Overall, I think that this show was definitely, this episode, it was a fun episode. It was nice to see some nods to previous Star Wars projects. I'm on the edge of my seat with that last shot of Baylan Skoll, the late Ray Stevenson, God rest his soul. I'm interested to find out more about these characters as the show unravels. The next episode is, well, for us on this side of the planet, it'll be Wednesday, because we're a day ahead of the States. So yeah, another 3 days, and then we get episode 4. So overall, I've enjoyed the series so far. On to the next bit of not really pop culture news, but I guess delays. We've had a couple movies get delayed. Kraven the Hunter was, for those of you who have those of you who not only listen to my podcast but also have listened to Comic Boys podcast and are longtime fans of both my podcast of both Cobbs Corner and Comic Boys or CB Media Network, whatever they're called now. We all drafted picks for the Fantasy Movie League back in January. I've had a pretty okay draft, at least first half of the year. I had some pretty solid picks. I mean, Shazam! Theory of the Gods. In retrospect, I should have chosen Blue Beetle. Creed 3, I had some hitters, Creed 3, Cocaine Bear. Those are my first three picks. I think my next pick, well, let's see now. Two of my picks have been delayed to next year. Because remember, we did say that some of these movies might not even come out this year. A lot of movies that are scheduled for like that last quarter of the year, October, November, December, they typically get pushed back to like the first quarter of the following year at the earliest. Such is the case with Kraven the Hunter, which was one of my picks, and just kind of looking at an article from Screen Rant. Sony's Kraven the Hunter release date was delayed by almost a year, moving from October 6, 2023 to August 30th, 2024. Movie delays are not exactly rare and can typically be explained by internal developments in the course of a movie's production, whether for better or worse. Now, I kind of went out on a limb picking Kraven the Hunter for my 2023 draft as one of the main picks. Like, it wasn't even like my bonus pick. My main pick, because I have faith in the Sony Marvel universe. It's a fragile universe at best. I liked Venom's 1 and 2. Venom's 1 and 2 was pretty solid. I saw Venom Let There Be Carnage in theaters. I think Morbius was just really like confusing. It looked like a half done movie. Like the date, the CGI looked dated even for like 2022. And I get the movie was supposed to come out in 2020, but then its release date was pushed back due to the COVID-19 pandemic and reasons beyond anyone's control. But Kraven the Hunter has a pretty stacked cast. I mean, you got Russell Crowe, Aaron Taylor Johnson, so it's got a pretty stacked cast and crew. I just think that Sony, you gotta like start to be more intentional with where are you going with this Sony Marvel universe? Are you setting up the Sinister Six? If so, how are you going to keep doing all these solo movies? And I think there's also like a Black Cat movie in production in development. Excuse me. And how are you going to set up all these movies without Spider-Man in your universe? Like, I'm just curious to see like what's going to happen. Because even like 4 years ago, when we didn't know if we were going to get Spider-Man 3 in the MCU, I thought that maybe Peter Parker was going to have to leave the MCU and go into the Sony Marvel universe. That was my theory, which ended up not coming to fruition. And now we know for a fact that there's a Spider-Man 4 coming out, that Tom Holland will make history as the very first iteration of Spider-Man to get a fourth movie. 4. All right. I mean, last year, Thor made history as the first Marvel superhero to get a fourth movie. And, well, I mean, with the writer's strike and everything, we don't have an official release date on Spider-Man 4, but it is going to happen. And Tom Holland will make history as the first version of Spider-Man to get a fourth movie. If you remember Tobey Maguire, he only got 3. He got 3, but then, and they were setting up a fourth movie and a bunch of spinoffs that just never happened. The fourth movie, which was announced and then got canceled. Andrew Garfield got 2, and they were going to do an Amazing Spider-Man 3, which then got canceled. Then they rebooted Spider-Man, and he was contracted for 5 MCU appearances. So it was Captain America Civil War was 1, Spider-Man Homecoming was 2. Avengers Infinity War was 3, Avengers Endgame was 4, Spider-Man Far From Home was 5. Tom Holland's contract was up. Sony and Marvel, they finally go back to the table, renegotiate, signs Tom Holland on for one more solo outing and one more team up film. I think that was initially the contract that was renewed in 2019. So we've already got his one solo film. So maybe he's not going to be in a team up film. Maybe they're just going to do Spider-Man 4 and then they're going to have to come back to the drawing table. So I'm just curious to see where they go with Kraven the Hunter, especially the really just negative reactions that first trailer got, that Red Brand trailer got. So maybe they're just going back and reevaluating some things, which can be a good thing. You know, I feel like this time next year, when Kraven the Hunter, God willing, actually does come out, you know, a year from now, I just have a feeling that it's going to be a better movie because of it. And that's just one of my picks that got delayed. The other one was, again, I think it was slated for December 20th. The untitled Ghostbusters Afterlife sequel. Article from Wikipedia. The film is due to be released by Sony Pictures, releasing on March 29th, 2024, taking over the original release date of Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. It was previously scheduled to be released on December 20th, 2023, but was delayed to its March date due to the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, one of my most anticipated movies of 2024. Like I said back in January, nothing will ever compare to the original Ghostbusters movie. All right. Maybe next spring I will sit down and watch all of the Ghostbusters movies. So far, I've only seen 1, 2 from like the 80s. I've seen, you know, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, which Ghostbusters 2 I wasn't too crazy about. I have not seen the 2016 Ghostbusters remake, which I heard got pretty mediocre reviews from critics, from audiences. You know, with Kate McKinnon, Leslie Jones, Chris Hemsworth, Dan Aykroyd did show up in that movie. Haven't seen that one. I'll have to actually watch that one. Ghostbusters Afterlife, I liked it. I saw it in theaters. I have to watch it again because I think I missed the first like 15 minutes. But from what I did see, I saw the majority of the movie. Loved it. It's a nice sort of like lighting of the next torch. I like that they brought back Ernie Hudson, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd. They paid homage to the late Harold Ramis, who passed away back in 2014. Harold Ramis, who played Egon. The movie follows Egon's grandkids, Egon's daughter, Egon, who I guess they killed off Egon in the Ghostbusters universe. And then the movie follows Egon's daughter and his grandkids as they move to Indiana because he had a house that he willed to his daughter. So it's his daughter and his grandkids moving over to his house in Indiana and going through all his stuff and, you know, sort of like a next generation sort of thing. I do not think that they should have done like a whole, like what they did with the CGI, like they really shouldn't have done that. You know, and the WGA-SAG-AFTRA strike, you know, I support the strike. Guys, all right, let it be known to my listeners and to the whole world. Cobbs Corner, we stand with the WGA, we stand with SAG-AFTRA. Support your writers, pay them what they are owed. You know, don't just rely on AI to solve all of our problems. But I also think that this is just the beginning. I think actors are going to have to, in their contracts, they're going to have to demand like not creative control, but like in their contracts, they're going to have to specify whether or not they will allow these studios to use their image and their likeness, whether they're dead or alive, to use their image or their likeness. All right, because otherwise it just goes to their estate. And a lot of times these actors, their estate, they just want money. You know, they say, hey, you know, pay us, $10, $15 million. And yeah, sure, you can do whatever you want with my deceased cousin, you know, which I feel like that's what happened with Christopher Reeves in, Christopher Reeves, God rest his soul. in the Flash when they had like the CGI Christopher Reeves. It's like it was really just like insensitive. Like, okay, this guy played Superman. All right, then he had a horrible horse accident. Okay, I highly recommend you guys like look up Christopher Reeves and his whole you know issues with like paralysis and then he tragically passed away back in 2004. And so I mean with everything that he went through, for them to do that in that movie, it was awful. But I think going forward, like it's something that actors are going to have to specify in their contracts and then also put in their wills as well. After they're gone, do any of these studios have the right to use your image and your likeness in any way after you're gone? So this movie being delayed, I don't particularly have an issue with it because it was for a legitimate reason. But again, Sony Pictures, you gotta kind of get the ball moving and kind of reevaluate things. And I sincerely hope and pray that they that the WGA-SAG-AFTRA strike, that it comes to a peaceful resolution. I sincerely hope and pray that these big corporations hear the writers, those that are being highly paid, those that are at the top of the pay grade, and those that are at the very bottom. The writers who are like at the top, who can afford to not write, who can afford to just not work and go on strike. Even those who may be at the very bottom and kind of struggling a bit right now because of the strike going on. I hope and pray that there's a peaceful resolution. I will say that with Ghostbusters Afterlife, I'm glad that versions of Ghostbusters that's out in circulation in the world now have maintained this mistake that was made back in like the first Ghostbusters, 1984. Also, Ghostbusters turns 40 next year. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Ghostbusters Afterlife being pushed back to 2024. It's like, hey, well, maybe they could do something with like the 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters. But in the very first Ghostbusters, there's a scene where there's the scene where Ray and here. There's a scene where Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd, I'm finding the where Winston, played by Ernie Hudson, and Ray Stantz, played by Dan Aykroyd, they're driving in like the Ghostbusters mobile, and they start talking about like the apocalypse. And Winston says, how like he it's like, oh, I love Jesus and his style. And he's like, don't you remember from like the Book of Revelations, something about like Revelation 7:12, and it's like talked about like the six seals and the apocalypse. And I mean, Ray says how like every religion has their own like, now he says their own myth about the end of days. All right. Now myself as a Christian, I recognize what the Book of Revelation says, about the day, what will happen on the day of judgment, that like the dead will rise, and the whole like fire and brimstone and all that. It also follows it up with no one knows the day nor the hour. And there's been a ton of people have been trying to predict the end of days, I feel like, ever since, and predicting like the second coming of Christ, like whenever shit hits the fan, which is a whole nother, pardon the expression, which is a whole other conversation. But there's a scene where they misquote the Bible. They say Revelation 7:12 when really it was Revelation 6:12. So I'm glad that in Ghostbusters Afterlife, when the kids drive up to Spangler's old house in Indiana, and there's a sign that says Revelation 6:12. It was Revelation 6:12. Okay, so they corrected a like 40-year-old mistake, But in order to understand that that's a correction, you have to, of course, watch the original Ghostbusters. I'm glad that I'm glad that like Sony Pictures has not tried to retcon it and like or like you can like verbally see that they said 712, but then like have like a voiceover of like, oh, it's actually 612. Like, no. I'm glad that they've maintained those copies of Ghostbusters that are still like in circulation today, whether if it's on television or television on stream. It says they say Revelation 712 in the original Ghostbusters, and then it's corrected later on. But yeah, March 29th, mark your calendars for the Untitled Ghostbusters sequel. Untitled Ghostbusters Afterlife sequel. All right, so there's been a few deaths in Hollywood recently. I will highlight two of them. People, celebrities die. There's like a ton of like celebrity deaths year after year. And not all of them get like the recognition that they deserve. But there are these two. Hang on. There are two actors that I will highlight for today's episode. Or no, two celebrities, I should say. Arleen Sorkin. Arleen Sorkin, for those who don't know, she was the voice of Harley Quinn on Batman the Animated Series back in the 90s. Now, myself, along with the diehard DC fans, will know that Harley Quinn was a character that was created for the show, Batman the Animated Series. And initially, Harley Quinn was not meant to be a sort of... She wasn't meant to be like a staple of the show and of the comics. She was supposed to be like a one-off character, kind of like a side character. But then the fans just loved her so much as a character. She was, Joker's love interest. She's like Joker's love interest. Well, I'm sure, like for those of you who've watched, although it's not an actual movie, Suicide Squad from 2016. Again, not an actual movie. Yep, got the toxic fandom over here. We see how like Dr. Harleen Quinzel, she was a psychiatrist assigned to the Joker at Arkham Asylum, who then fell in love with the Joker. She went from being a psychiatrist to then being his girlfriend, to then being his partner in crime. They both became, criminals, vigilantes. But then, Harley Quinn, at least in the comics, she reformed her image, joining the Birds of Prey, joining the Suicide Squad, going from being a villain to being sort of a reformed anti-heroine, who might still be a bit extreme at times, but still, kind of does the right thing and like does, I guess, bad things to bad guys, essentially. I enjoyed Birds of Prey, all right, as a movie. And then in the comics, she eventually, gets enough of a positive reputation in Gotham that she becomes an honorary member of the Bat family, which is like Batman, Nightwing, Damian Wayne, the Bat family, essentially. Batman and all of his like known associates. So her becoming an honorary member of that group of superheroes. Some of the same superheroes that she once plotted against, that she once worked against, pretty much being welcomed into their family as an honorary member, and going back to using her psychology degree to becoming a like therapist for superheroes in like the DC universe. So I'm really hoping they dive into that going forward in James Gunn's DCU. And essentially, all that came from Arleen Sorkin. Arleen Sorkin, the inspiration for, American actress, screenwriter, television personality, and comedian. She's known for portraying Caleb Jones on the NBC daytime series Days of Our Lives. So yeah, she was on Days of Our Lives, and again, she came up with the concept for Harley Quinn. So R.I.P. to Arleen Sorkin. You will forever be Harley Quinn. And to all of the now he's before my time, but I'm aware of his existence. Bob Barker. Bob Barker, who's an American television game show host, hosted CBS's The Price is Right, the longest running game show in North American television history, from 1972 up through 2007. He hosted it for 35 years. He also hosted Truth or Consequences from 1956 to 1975. So Bob Barker, a titan of the game show community, of the history of American televised game shows, and he passed away at the age of 99. So he was 99. He was old. He's an old guy. Bob Barker, and he was honored by The Price is Right, which is hosted by Drew Carey. Yeah, so it's hosted by Drew Carey now, but Bob Barker. Yeah, R.I.P. to Bob Barker, Arleen Sackler. I'll try to cover like as many like celebrity deaths, because I know so many that occur in a year, that I'll try to highlight the really big ones throughout the year, especially as it pertains to TV and film. And we do primarily focus on, as I said, Marvel, Star Wars, DC, as well as other topics. But like those are kind of like the main staples of this podcast. But yeah, Bob Barker, Arleen Sackler, R.I.P. To finish off the podcast, I will talk a bit about some movies that I recently saw. Recently, I watched National Treasure. It's the very first National Treasure, which I realized next year, National Treasure turns 20. Yep, it's a movie from 2004 with Nicolas Cage, Diane Kruger, Harvey Keitel, Justin Bartha, Sean Bean, and Jon Voight. Just naming a few of the cast members. And I didn't really like this movie when I first watched it. When it was like 2000, I was maybe, I don't know, I was maybe like 13 or 14 the very first time I saw it. And I've never called myself someone who entertains conspiracy theories. Okay, like, in terms of like conspiracy theories per se, although if you know me, you know that I'm a huge history nerd, huge history buff, particularly American history. All right. So this movie, we see Nicolas Cage essentially steal the Declaration of Independence, and stealing the Declaration of Independence, and even like the US dollar, and like the all-seeing eye. I think they reference like the Illuminati in this movie, and but yeah, it's like collecting like relics, and they find this old ship, the Charlotte. It's like The Secret Lies with Charlotte. And it's just such a wild ride. It's an action adventure movie. Nicolas Cage just being Nicolas Cage. I'm now realizing that the movie's actually rated PG. Probably could have passed for PG-13. It's just such an all-around fun movie, and it really just makes you wonder about like all the like treasures that were never really found, that nobody's really been able to like, that historians just haven't really been able to find. Like there's so many treasures that have just been lost to the world that you can still find, that are like still out there, you can still find. And like some of them that probably still exist but have fallen into like earth, they've fallen into our legends and our myths, you know, but they probably still exist out there in the world. One of them, of course, being the Ark of the Covenant. All right, you know, again, from a from the Christian standpoints, like, you know, the Ark of the Covenant. There's all these theories out there. Like there's a tribe in Ethiopia. They claim to have the Ark. There's some say it's in a unmarked cave in Jordan. I think some say that it's buried underneath the temple in Jerusalem. I've even heard other claims that it's buried at the bottom of like the Sea of Galilee, and during the second coming of Christ, like the day of judgment and like the second coming of Christ, that the ark will rise from the Sea of Galilee. And you know, there's other theories that it was like aliens, and you know, that I don't believe. I don't believe that aliens built the pyramids, or aliens built, or that the Ark of the Covenant was like a satellite to talk with like aliens. Like no. I mean that's a bunch of malarkey, as the president would say, as President Biden would say. But check out this movie. You know, it's a really fun action adventure movie. It's available on Disney Plus, although available on Disney Plus if you're subscribed to Disney Plus. Although you can also rent it on YouTube and Google Play for $3.79. It's available on Vudu, Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, all rental options. As I was watching the movie, as I was watching the previews before the movie, because I watched the movie on DVD. You see, like old school, like I have it on DVD. So I was watching it on DVD in my portable DVD player. Don't even need Wi-Fi. You know, this was again 2004. You know, Wi-Fi wasn't really a thing yet. And as I'm watching the previews, I realized there's a preview for like Herbie Fully Loaded, which I guess was still in like development at the time. And like I'm looking at all like the computer graphics. I'm like, wow, like you see Gen Z, which okay, I am technically a part of Gen Z, but I guess I'm on the older end of the spectrum. You know, I feel like we kind of take it for granted now, like with all the visual effects that we have now. Anybody who's in like, you know, high school, anybody under 18, okay, who was not alive when Herbie Fully Loaded came out, or might have like just been born that year, because I think Herbie Fully Loaded was either 2004 or 2005. I forget the exact year that it came out because I haven't seen the movie in God knows how long. But I'm just looking at like all like the computer graphics, and I just remember like how much of a process that was, like just computer graphics, computer animation, and the combination of like live action, having a physical set, and then also having like computer graphics like intertwine. Like that was a whole process back then. You know, I think it's easier today because we've got like AI and technology is just at a point where like it's easier today. But you look back at like filming movies in like the early 2000s, particularly Gladiator, which is a movie I've only watched on DVD. I watched the movie and then I watched the 30-minute behind the scenes documentary, and that movie came out in the year 2000. That was one of the earliest applications of computer graphics. Right, some of those scenes in the movie, you can kind of see where the physical set ends and where like the computer graphics kind of, some of it's kind of noticeable, like the grass, the arena, you know, but those graphics actually hold up pretty decently today. Not gonna lie, I mean, like almost a quarter of a century later, you know, it's actually holds up pretty decently. There's a preview for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I have to read the book first and then watch it at some point. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I can't remember what the other movie or movies were that I saw previews for, but those previews reminded me of how old the movie is. I'm like, wait, Herbie Fully Loaded. Wait, what year did this movie come out? Oh, 2004. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, so yes, definitely check out National Treasure. Overall, I give it 8 out of 10. Solid 8 out of 10. I have to see National Treasure Book of Secrets. That's the one I remember. Came out in 2007. I feel like I've seen bits and pieces of that movie here and there. I remember when it came out. I think I was on a plane coming from Jamaica. This was 2008. I was on a plane coming back from Jamaica, and this was before. Now, Air Jamaica, I don't think that airline exists anymore. They didn't have TVs in the headrest. You see, I feel like in like 2004, 2005, JetBlue Airlines, they started that, and it was brand new at the time. TVs in the headrest. JetBlue Airlines started that. Air Jamaica, they had like the TVs that were like in the roof of like the planes, like, and then they would like show movies. One of the movies that they showed on the flight back was National Treasure Book of Secrets, which I didn't really watch the movie then. I mean, I kind of fell asleep, but it was that and The Great Debaters. The Great Debaters, one of like Denzel's most underrated performances. So that's one of the movies. Just yesterday, I rewatched The Force Awakens, which, I mean, like even like earlier when I was talking about Ahsoka, it's like, again, there's like a 30-year time jump between episode 6 and 7. So I feel like there's so much filler. There's so many stories that can be told between episodes 6 that take place between episode 6 and 7. I think, now that I'm older, like I remember seeing the movie in theaters and just like being blown away, like we're just excited, Star Wars is back. I just feel like for my generation, for Gen Z, the sequel trilogy, that will always be our Star Wars. Like, because I'm a bit on the older end of the spectrum, as I said before, on the older end of Gen Z, I do remember seeing Revenge of the Sith in theaters when I was 4. Okay, 2005, I was 4 years old when Revenge of the Sith came out. I definitely remember seeing it in theaters. And as I was rewatching Revenge of the Sith the other day, like there were certain scenes that like I remember seeing that in theaters way back when. I've seen it a million times since then, but like that's like probably my earliest Star Wars memory is seeing Revenge of the Sith in theaters when I was 4. I think my generation, we grew up with, like, for us, our Star Wars was really like the last 15 years. Like there was, 2008, we got Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I actually saw Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the movie. I saw that one in theaters, the animated movie. I think it came out 2008. Before the show was the movie, and then the show. I didn't really watch Clone Wars in real time. I watched like a few episodes here and there, but I remember when it was on Cartoon Network, and we didn't really have like streaming yet. I mean, this was like fall 2008, like spring 2009. Netflix was pretty much like the only name, but they weren't like the only name in streaming, but like streaming, 15 years ago, streaming was not what it is now. Blockbuster still existed. We were still kind of at the beginning of that transition from analog to digital. So you kind of still had to watch TV at that point, or TiVo, DVR. You had to like set it up to record or just watch it in real time. So, and that just wasn't me at that time. So I eventually started watching Clone Wars as it showed up on Netflix years later. Rebels, I watched a bit in real time. Rebels, I remember it started fall 2014. I had just started high school. I was just starting high school when Rebels started. So but maybe like the first season of Rebels I caught in real time. I started watching like the second season, like the first season and a half, into like the middle of season 2. But then I eventually kind of just fell off, and it wasn't like intentional or anything. I just kind of stopped watching it and just kind of got distracted. There's other shows, other stuff out there. So other content. And then I was in 10th grade. 10th grade, December of December of 2015 when The Force Awakens came out. It was, what was the exact date? December 18th. December 18th, 2015. Like, I remember the first trailer dropped like December 2014, a year in advance. But when the movie came out, it was really big. I wore my Star Wars shirt. We saw it at Cinemark in North Haven, Connecticut, which had just opened. They had reclining chairs. They were like the first movie theater. I want to say they were the first movie theater in Connecticut to have reclining chairs. That technology was new at the time, 8 years ago. And I was just excited to see, like, all these, new characters, some old characters. Christmas 2014, we had gotten all 6 Star Wars movies, episodes 1 through 6, along with 3 bonus discs on Blu-ray. So, and we had a Blu-ray player. Like, we watched all 6 movies, so I'm, for the very first time, watching all 6 movies. I think I saw A New Hope for the first time when I was 10. But I saw like Empire, Return of the Jedi for the first time at 14. At 14 for the first time, I'm seeing all 6 of them. And I just remember how excited I was to see The Force Awakens in theaters. I think we saw it maybe like a day or two after Christmas. Yeah, that was my sophomore year of high school. Yep, December 2015. And then like December 2016, when Rogue One came out. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. I saw that one in theaters. I saw it in 3D, actually. I saw it in 3D. That was 11th grade. 12th grade, 2 Star Wars movies came out. There was December 2017, The Last Jedi, a movie that I actually enjoyed. All right. It's a different kind of Star Wars movie. All right. Different kind of Star Wars movie. Didn't follow that same format that everybody's used to. It's not Empire Strikes Back. It will never be Empire Strikes Back. Okay. I mean, the sequel trilogy is not the original trilogy, and it never will be. So, yeah, that was like December 2017. So my senior year of high school. And then later that spring, towards the end of my senior year, that May, was Solo: A Star Wars Story. I saw Solo in theaters, and I thought it was a fun movie. A lot of people said they didn't like it, and yes, the movie did go through like 3 different directors behind the scenes, and like, Ron Howard was like the final official like director. Ron Howard, best known for Happy Days. For the for the Gen Xers listening, Ron Howard, yes, the guy from Happy Days. I still thought it was a fun movie, all things considered. And then we got The Mandalorian started that fall 2019 or November 2019. Disney Plus came out. The Mandalorian's like the flagship series. And episode 9 I saw right before COVID. I saw it January 2020 at a movie theater that is permanently closed now. I've only seen it that one time though. But that's my generation Star Wars. That will always be my generation Star Wars, along with, of course, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Ahsoka series that's going on, the upcoming Dave Filoni Star Wars movie. So that's always going to be my generation's Star Wars. Just generation gaps. Like millennials had the prequels. Millennials, you guys had the prequels. Gen X had the original trilogy. I can only imagine what it was like back then, hearing in the theaters Darth Vader say, "Luke, I am your father." That plot twist back then, pre-internet. Gen X, that was your Star Wars, along with the holiday special. That Star Wars, that pop culture era. Millennials had the prequels, the prequel trilogy. Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, along with Lego Star Wars and like the toys and like the Star Tours ride at Disney, and like that era of like Star Wars television, film, and pop culture surrounding Star Wars at that time. And then for my generation, we've got Disney Plus. Those around the same age as me, those will say maybe like, I don't know, between like 20 and 25, we remember Clone Wars. We remember Clone Wars. Many of us grew up watching Clone Wars, Rebels. That's our childhood Star Wars. And then And now we've got the sequel trilogy, Rogue One, Solo, all these live action Star Wars series. So yeah, each generation has, their Star Wars. Well, I mean, that is all that I have for this week's edition of Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs. If you liked what you heard today, then feel free to like this video. It really helps the algorithm. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review on all podcast listening platforms, wherever you're listening from. Give us a 5-star review if you like what you heard today. Be sure to follow us on all social media. That will be in the show notes below. Questions, comments, concerns, recommendations for movies or shows that I should review, you already know what to do. Email me, cobbscornerpodcast@gmail.com. Hope you guys enjoyed your stay here at Cobbs Corner. Again, just a reminder that this is a bi-weekly show, so there will not be an episode next week. This will be bi-weekly. Hope you guys enjoyed your stay here at Cobbs Corner, and I will talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.